Hello everyone, my name is Jiawei Liu and I'm a part of the front-end team. Today we are going to introduce our fascinating project, Brown Hope Age Status app. This is a Portland State University Computer Science Capstone project from winter to spring 2022. Before we get into the details, I'm going to introduce our team members. Our team lead is Jeffrey Jernstrom, and we have our software engineers, Adrian Gonzalez, Austin Britton, Blake Loveless, Jim Liu, Mack Foggia, and Natasha Needham. Our project is a progressive web app that enables Brown Hole financial aid applicants to create accounts on the web app that verifies the connection with the record and establish authentication credential for future access as user. User of the web app will be able to view and edit the select portion of their Airtable records and check the status of their application. Non-user applicants will be able to check the progress of their application. Today's content will be in 6 sections: project demo, features, architecture, development, unexpected events, and conclusion. In the next part, Blake will be introducing the project demo.
Hello, my name is Blake Loveless. I was the team lead on the front end, and I'm going to give you a project demo. We broke down the project demo by user profiles. This first user profile is someone who's less tech savvy and was directed to the website to check their application status. The user would land on this home page, fill out their user information, and then check their application status. And I see it's been submitted. This next profile is someone with more average tech knowledge and access, and they need to update their contact information with Brown Hope. Similar to the previous user, this user lands on the application status page, and they were informed to change their information. They need to have an account. They don't have one yet, so they select to create one. The user will go to their email, and there will be a verification code, and we let them know where that is right there. So if I'm this user, now I'm ready to go on and confirm my verification code. Let's see. It says they don't have any information for me yet. Oh, there it is. So I'm not living at this same address anymore. Now that I've changed my email address, I can go ahead and save those changes. And while I'm here, I might as well see what my application status is as well. And turns out it's submitted. All good to go. So now I can leave the site and I don't have to worry about anything else. The last user profile we'll discuss is someone who is code literate and has experience or interest in programming. And they would be someone who is responsible for tailoring the web app to a new organization. I used the tutorial I found in the front-end README to learn how to make changes to the appearance and some of the input fields. And I was able to get a new look for the Black Resilience Fund. I also want to thank all of you for watching our project demo, and I'm going to pass it off to Austin for a feature overview.
Hello, my name is Austin Britton, and I was the lead developer on the back end, and I'll be going over some of the key features of our application. Our target audience consists of individuals who may or may not be overly tech savvy, but are likely going to use our tool to check their application status, create an account, or update and view their information that has already been provided. We don't expect them to always have access to the same devices or reliable internet. Ease of access was a key feature in our application. We wanted people to be able to, with minimal effort, come to the site and quickly check their application status. We recognized that not everyone will create an account, and sometimes it's not feasible to do so. By providing key details such as a first name and a last name, as well as a birthday, we're able to provide the status of an application quickly to any user with or without an account. For users with an account and the ones that are logged in, a status is provided automatically. For users that don't have an account already, it's very simple to securely set one up. The layout is designed in a way that is intuitive for individuals to find exactly what they need from any point in the site. Simply navigating to the login page will allow a user to log in or sign up for an account. Once the user signs up for an account with an email and a password, our application checks the email against emails currently present in the database and links the record to a newly created account, if it's found. From here, a user is able to view or update their information as necessary. We recognize that our application will be used from many devices, so we made it a priority to ensure that the front end was fully responsive. In the future, there are two key items that we would like to see implemented. Two-factor authentication can provide for a much more secure option in regard to changing and accessing user information. As well, we'd like to see a password and recovery option for accounts without having to go directly to Brownhope.
All right, I'm Mack. I'm going to talk about how we constructed this application, the different components and how they interact, and the different technologies we used. This overview shows on the left the user interacting with the front end and the Black Resilience Fund application for aid. That application, which is a form, submits data directly to our database, and then the front end and the back end work together to interact with the user and interact with the database to retrieve information for them. The database we're using is Airtable, which is a cloud-based relational database merged with a spreadsheet. It's already in use by our sponsor. We are interacting with it using their JavaScript API, and we're using a synced copy of the main Brownhope data table just to safeguard against any issues with data access. And we separated the auth and user data tables just in case we want to add multiple authentication methods as a future feature. The front and back are implemented with Node.js and TypeScript. The user interacts with the front end, enters their information, makes requests. The back end then takes that information, processes it, and makes calls to Airtable using the API and returns the user's information. Other technologies we used, the project is deployed on Google Cloud Platform. It uses Nginx as a web server. It's containerized with Docker and Docker Compose, and our SSL certs are acquired from Let's Encrypt using Certbot.
Hi, my name is Jeff, and I'm going to be talking about our development process. Our project timeline can be roughly divided into 4 sections. Research, where we looked at the specifications and the technologies that were going to go into our project. And from this research, we morphed into team building, where we established our communication over Discord and our version control and collaboration, which happened over at GitHub. We also hosted bi-weekly meetings that launched us into our design phase, where we described as in detail as possible an MVP that we shared with the sponsor to get their feedback on. Once we had that MVP, we were able to move into the development phase. We rushed as quickly as possible to meet that MVP so that we could then move into a sort of a design iteration with the sponsor, where we were moving closer and closer to a product that they wanted. Team contributions divide roughly into 5 sections. Administrative, headed up by myself, the team lead, where I facilitated communication, contributed to overall team strategy, agenda-driven meetings, and project documentation. Adrian facilitated our stand-ups, where we checked in with each of the team members in our meeting to check on the progress that they were making toward our project. And Natasha and Mack contributed project documentation. Sponsor relations was a separate subgroup that we had that involved working with the sponsor, hosting agenda-driven meetings, progress stand-ups, gathering feedback and requirements, and later on, demoing the project and gathering feedback and requirements based off of that. I, Natasha, and Mack worked on this, as well as Blake joining in with us later on. And Blake also headed up our front-end development, which was also another subgroup where he managed workflow, documentation and unit testing, design and development, configuration management, and Jim and Adrian greatly helped out in prototyping, design development, and unit testing on the front end. DevOps system consisted of Mack setting up our Google Cloud deployment platform, setting up a Discord webhook for automated messaging, and doing pull request management, and also helping out with the web server configuration. I contributed to our CI configuration to implement automated testing and tutorials for helping to contribute to our GitHub. And Natasha also contributed to web server configuration. Austin headed up our backend development, giving us our initial boost, doing workflow management, design and development, documentation and unit testing, tutorials and demonstrations. Mack did some design and development and documentation, and then as I did some development as well.
Hi, I'm Natasha, and I'll be discussing some unexpected events that we encountered as a team. The previous Capstone group did not have access to the GitHub repo where their code and documentation were stored. So while we waited on gaining access to that, we focused on research and team building. The second unexpected event that we encountered were immediate scope changes by the sponsor. So because we thought we would be building a much larger app and we're instead building quite a smaller one, we had to re-examine our priorities. Later on in the project, the sponsor informed us that they would be shifting their organizational structure. So we had to assess how that would change our app and what sort of changes we would have to make for the future. Lastly, upon learning that we had a new priority of making this project a template for other nonprofit organizations to utilize, we decided we would move towards generalization and configuration files and away from domain specificity.
Thank you, Natasha. I'm going to go ahead and wrap up our presentations by getting into what we learned over the last 2 terms, as well as what we would do differently if we were given this project again in 1 term. So for lessons learned, I broke it up into front-end, back-end, and DevOps. For the front-end, we learned about mocking up a front-end using Figma, and we did this to get the sponsor an early look at what the web app would look like. After we got the web app actually all built in React, we learned about input verification and unit testing with Fire Event. For Fire Event, we used it to make sure that all the elements were rendered incorrectly on each one of the web app pages, as well as verifying the input was being read incorrectly. For the backend, we learned about the Airtable API and overcoming some of the limitations of the API. For example, the Airtable API only allows us a certain number of calls per minute, and that was one of the challenges that we had to overcome with this project. We also learned about using Nginx, and we did unit testing for the backend with Supertest. As far as DevOps, we learned about setting up auto deployment after a pull request was approved and successfully passed all the automated tests. We also learned about communicating within the team and setting up bi-weekly team meetings, as well as meeting with the sponsor to give them updates on our progress every week and taking the feedback that they would give us as far as making changes to the front end or anything like that. Some of the things that we would do differently is making the front end even more modular than it already was. We built it with a modular header and a modular footer, so we didn't have to copy and paste a whole bunch of code, but we would have made it more modular to make it easier to add and remove inputs as were needed. We also would have spent more time studying the original source code and really getting to know it a lot more. This was a challenge though, as we got the source code a little late in 1 term. I just want to end by saying thank you to Brown Hope for entrusting us with this project, as well as Bruce for giving us guidance throughout the last 2 terms.
And I feel like from my opportunity of engaging with you as a group, I feel like you really grasp the concept and what we're going for Brown Hope and understanding our programs and the needs of our programs as a whole, but specifically, of course, Black Resilience Fund. But as I was telling, I was like, we can use this all over. Like we can do this in multiple ways. And this will be so helpful to our community members. But you as a group creating this project can easily make it better and easier on our community members as a whole. And that's the impact in the way. And I always tell people in social service fields, sometimes you don't get to see the impact, the things that you may do or the support that you may provide. And in this aspect, you may not get to see directly what comes to pass 10, 15 years from now with the work that you've created today. But it's the fact that we know that it will impact like the outcome 10 to 15 years from now, to know that we'll be able to say like we started here.
It's really been a pleasure working with this team. It's been really comforting seeing the team sort of take on the vision and take on the concern that, that we have for our program and our community members, and seeing them kind of like just really absorb that and relate to it and go with it, right? So we didn't have to be telling them all kinds of details like, oh, sometimes people might be in a bad situation, or they might need privacy, or they might need whatever, like they just absorbed that already. were running with it and thinking about these details in advance. And that made it really comforting to be able to hand off this kind of stuff and knowing that it was in good hands and that they were going to be caring about the end result for the users that they were going to be working with.
Not too much. I just got to say, like, your guys' documentation was the best I've ever seen. And what made it the best, I think, was just that it was consistent. Like, it wasn't like something you started and then like forgot 2 weeks later, but just it kept evolving and growing and finding. So I think that's one of the more amazing things I've seen from a team effort lately.